Copwatch, policing the police every single day.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to welcome you to the June 13th We the People meeting and assembly in Florida. I'd like to call the meeting to order and start by the recitation of the Bivens decision 3 times. This meeting is private, bearing false witness, misrepresentation, and posting inflammatory rhetoric in public forums is forbidden and shall be addressed in an appropriate manner. To eliminate all conflict and false allegations, is there anyone in attendance at today's meeting that is a member or agent of any law enforcement agency of the federal, state, county, city, or township agencies present? Hearing none, the Bivens decision 2nd time. This meeting is private, bearing false witness, misrepresentation, and posting inflammatory rhetoric in public forums is forbidden and shall be addressed in an appropriate manner. To eliminate all conflict and false allegations, is there anyone in attendance at today's meeting that is a member or agent of any law enforcement agency of the federal, state, local, county, city, or township agencies present? Hearing none, for the 3rd and last time, this meeting is private, bearing false witness, misrepresentation, and posting inflammatory rhetoric in public forums is forbidden and shall be addressed in an appropriate manner. To eliminate all conflict and false allegations, is there anyone in attendance at today's meeting that is a member or agent of any law enforcement agency of the federal, state, county, city, or township agencies present? Okay, hearing none, I would like to move forward with the roll call of the counties. If you would please respond by saying your county name and present. Alachua, Baker, Bay, Bradford, Brevard.
Robert.
No.
Present? Is Brevard present?
Yes.
Thank you. Broward, Calhoun, Charlotte, Citrus, Clay. Clay is present? Is Clay present?
Citrus is.
Citrus is, thank you. Charlotte County, Charlotte present? Collier, Columbia, DeSoto, Dixie, Duval County, Escambia, Flagler, Franklin, Gadsden, Gilchrist, Hardy. Is Hardy County present? Hendry, Hernando, Highlands. Is Highlands County present? Hillsborough, Holmes, Indian River, Jackson, Jefferson, Lafayette, Lake, Lee, Leon, Levy, Liberty, Madison, Manatee, present. Marion,
Present.
Martin, Miami-Dade, Okeechobee, Orange County. Orange County.
Yep, present.
Osceola, Palm Beach, Pasco, Pinellas. Polk. Is Polk County present? Putnam. Santa Rosa. Sarasota.
Present.
Seminole.
Present.
St. John.
5-2.
Thank you. St. John's. St. Lucie. Sumter. Sumter County present? Suwannee. Taylor.
Present.
Union. Volusia. Waukulla. Walton.
Polk.
Polk.
Yes.
Polk County. Thank you. Glades. Gulf. Hamilton. Monroe. Nassau. Okaloosa. Washington. Has anyone joined the call before and not been here on the roll call for the counties? Please identify your county.
If I may.
Yes.
Hardy.
Hardy. Thank you. Okay, I would like to ask for someone to lead us in a prayer, please. Who would like to do that tonight?
I'll do it.
Thank you.
Father God, we come to you tonight and ask your blessing on this meeting, that we could restore this nation to the biblical principles that it was founded upon. We ask your blessing on each and every one. We pray for those who are ill and our soldiers abroad and at home. We ask this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Okay, I'd like to introduce, with the permission of the Assembly, a little bit of a new wrinkle. I'd like to ask a simple question, and it's meant for educational purposes. And tonight's question is, what are the 4 elements or areas that the federal government is authorized by the Constitution to cross a state's border to enforce? Hagan, you can't answer. What are the 4 areas of activity that the federal government is authorized to cross a state border to come into the state to enforce? Who can answer that, please?
I'll give you one. Commerce.
I'm sorry, commerce?
Commerce, yes.
Yeah, unfortunately, no, that's not one of them.
No? Okay.
Treason.
Correct. Keep going.
Treaty violation.
Correct.
Counterfeiting.
Correct.
I don't know the last one.
Piracy.
Piracy.
Everybody lock this one in. Treaty violations, treason, counterfeiting, and piracy. Those are the 4 things that the federal government can cross the state borders to enforce. There's nothing else that they are authorized with delegated authority to cross the state borders to enforce. Okay, I'd like to move forward with the old business. And we did talk a little bit about the committees last week. And I'd like to bring forward, I did send out a list of the committees in the invitation for tonight's meeting. And I'd like to bring forward the session at this point in time of the committee reports. I haven't coordinated this before the call, so does any committee have a report to bring forward at this time? Please identify your committee.
Yes. This is
Okay,
what committee am I? I got to go look it up.
Okay, I screwed up. Hang on one second. I would like to ask anyone that is new to the assembly to simply identify themselves, their county, and 1 or 2 sentences about their background so that people can get familiar with the new members of the assembly and potentially connect with them. Any new people on the call for the first time, please identify yourself. Just your first name, your county, and a couple of sentences. Okay, hearing none, go ahead. Committee reports. Mark.
What? You want me to report on this?
Yes, please.
Okay. Let me walk over here. Stand by. Okay, this is the rules for the Orlando Assembly of Meetings. And I'll just run over this real quick. And Roger can send this out to everybody if they want to change anything. But it's a call the meeting to order, as we've already done. Roll call of the counties, which we've done. We had the prayer. And state the rules as we usually do. The meeting, and those rules are, if you want me to run through them, is the meeting is a private meeting and is limited to participation by people only. 2 is lawyers, attorneys, members of the bar, judges, public servants, public officers, government employees are prohibited from participation. Any such on this call, they must leave now. Okay, item 3 is any questions, comments, then leave now if you are one of the before mentioned. When wishing to speak, the chair will recognize you to have the floor. Once the floor is granted, item 5, once the floor is granted, the speaker shall continue on subject A. If off subject, the moderator will issue or accept a point of order to bring the speaker back on subject. B, anyone can call a point of order at any time to restore the subject matter of the discussion, period. The chair will act accordingly, period. C, if anyone wishes to speak as to the subject being spoken about, they shall address the chair if the speaker will yield to any appropriate point on subject. The subject, wait a minute now, and shall address the chair. Okay, fine. D, if the speaker yields for a short suggestion, then the chair shall recognize the interruption for a short statement. E, if the chair believes that the interrupter has made his point, then he, the chair, shall inform the interrupter that the floor is returned to the original speaker. Now, the next section is secretary shall read the minutes of the former minutes. Shall read the minutes of before, naturally. You want me to keep going here? We just have about 3 more.
Sure.
Okay. Item 5 now is secretary shall read the minutes of the former meeting. That's right. A, any corrections, deletions, or additions, period. B, motion to accept the minutes, 1, as read or with corrections, deletions, or additions. C, second the motion. D, any further discussion. E, all in favor say aye or nay. F, motion accepted with any corrections, deletions, or additions. Let's see. Now, the next point that would be brought up would be item 6, which is the treasurer's report. A, any corrections, deletions, or additions. B, motion to accept the treasurer's report as read or with corrections, deletions, and additions. C, second the motion. D, any further discussion? E, all in favor say A, all against say nay. F, motion's accepted. B, with any corrections or deletions or additions. Okay, the last one is 5, motion to pay the bills. Any corrections, deletions, or omissions? B, second the motion. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye, all opposed say nay. Motion accepted, supposedly. Then, after we get through that, the usual beginning of the meeting, then we would go into old business, and then we would go into next would be new business, then open the floor for discussion on any subject. And the next would be any motions by who that might be would bring it up to adjourn, or a motion to adjourn to the next date. And that covers it. How's that?
Okay, thank you. So these, ladies and gentlemen, these are the proposed rules for orderly assembly of meetings. And Mark has read them the first time. I will send them out in writing with the next email that goes out with a link to this recording. Is there a motion to accept or modify and amend the rules?
I would make the motion, however, I'm on the committee, so I don't think it's appropriate that I make the motion or second it.
I'll make the motion.
Okay, did someone else ask for the floor?
If I may,
Yes.
I'll motion to accept the rules as outlined.
Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, that motion is carried. We will run the meetings according to these rules, and up until and unless the Rules Committee comes forward with a change that is acceptable to the Assembly, these will be the basic rules that we will use to run the meeting. Okay, any other committee report forthcoming?
Yes, the due process of law. Mark and I are on that committee as well. And I've outlined the due process of law, and most of it comes from the Bill of Rights. However, I just sent this out to a bunch of people that are probably on this call and some that are not. But it's enumerated in the Bill of Rights, in the Declaration of Independence, and in the Constitution itself. Number 1 is the right against search and seizure in the 4th Amendment. I'm not going to read the amendments that it's all in because, Roger, I sent it to you as well, and I'm going to ask that you send it out to everybody on our list that comes on this call or anyone that you have contacts for. Warrant before arrest, right to common law court under Article 3, Section 2, Clause 2, or Clause 1. When arrested, you have the right to habeas corpus. You must be taken before a magistrate judge immediately, not in 72 hours the way they do it now. Habeas corpus can only be denied in time of rebellion or invasion, and only if the public safety requires it. That's Article 1, Section 9, Clause 2. The warrant must be supported by affidavit of probable cause, signed by the claimant, not the public servant. And then before you can be prosecuted, it has to be supported by oath or affirmation, and the warrant must be supported by oath describing the person and the place where the thing can be seized. Must have an indictment from the people's grand jury before prosecution. Shall not be subjected to double jeopardy. Cannot be forced to be a witness against yourself. Cannot be deprived of life, that's in the Life, Liberty, and Property in the Declaration of Independence, cannot be deprived of liberty, cannot be deprived of property without due process of law. Private property cannot be taken without just compensation being first provided. The right to a speedy trial, the right to a public trial, the right to an impartial jury. The jury must be from your community. That's the Sixth Amendment. Must be informed of the nature and cause of the accusation. Sixth Amendment. Right to be confronted by the witnesses against you. Sixth Amendment. Right to obtain witnesses in your favor. Sixth Amendment. Right to but someone learned in the law. Sixth Amendment. Right to trial by jury in all criminal cases. Article 3, Section 2, Clause 3. Notice it says by jury, not judge. Right to trial by jury in all cases exceeding $20. Seventh Amendment. That's civil and criminal. Right against any decision by the jury being submitted to any other court of the United States for review. Seventh Amendment. Right to the use of common law rules only. This means the Bible, the Magna Carta, Declaration of Independence, U.S. Constitution, and the Bill of Rights. Those are the rules of the common law that's enumerated in the Seventh Amendment. Right against excessive bail, Eighth Amendment. Right against excessive fines, Eighth Amendment. Right against cruel and unusual punishment, Eighth Amendment. Right to all rights unless you have injured someone else as an injured party stating their claim by signed affidavit before mentioned. Right to a bill of particulars, Sixth Amendment. That means that they have to explain to you what witnesses they have and what information that they have that they're charging you with, and showing that they have obtained that through the proper due process of law process. The right against deprivation of certain rights in the Ninth Amendment. That means over 300 rights are enumerated in the Constitution and Bill of Rights, but that's not all we have. We reserved all rights to the people. Right from prosecutor or judges construing that you have no right in any matter whatsoever. Ninth Amendment. Reservation of all powers in the people. 10th Amendment. And the right against an equity or admiralty or maritime court. Article 3, Section 2, Clause 1. I yield. That's it.
Okay, and Hagan, correct me if I'm wrong, you said that you have sent me a copy of this and you would like me to get this out to the Assembly members.
Yes, I just sent it a few minutes ago.
Okay. And what is it titled, please?
Due process of law.
Okay. Okay, now, we don't, is there any reason, Hagan, from your perspective, that we need a motion on this?
I would like to see people read it. I want to say this. When it comes to discussion, I will not answer questions that are speculative or playing devil's advocate, like the what if. I don't care. I don't give a hoot about what if. And I'm not going to answer questions like that. And I don't mean to be disrespectful. It's just not productive to play that role, because you know these people are going to try not to do these. They only enumerate two things in their courts that is due process of law. Here we have 34. So there's a huge disparity between what due process of law really is and what they do in the de facto courts.
Okay, so it sounds to me like...
I don't think I answered your question, but I would prefer that we let people read it, and because we're going to have to open after the vote up for questions, or we could take the vote and open for questions in the next meeting.
But what exactly would the vote be for? What would be the purpose of the vote?
To accept this as due process of law with a resolution by the people put into the court system.
Okay. And would it be the opinion of the committee that this should be sent as a notice to every branch of the local, state, and federal government?
As far as the judiciary is concerned, especially.
Okay,
lawyers
so then
and
what
judges.
what I would suggest we do is entertain a motion to hold a discussion now about anything that people want to talk about that Hagan just covered. And then after I send this out, we would hold, next week, we would offer, someone would need to consider offering a motion to vote on the acceptance of this as due process of law. Does that sound reasonable? Okay,
Yeah.
Hearing no objections, I'd like to open up the discussion. Any questions for Hagan about what he read as due process of law? Okay, here's one question, Hagan. Could you explain in just a few sentences or maybe one or two paragraphs what exactly is habeas corpus?
Habeas corpus is your right when arrested to be taken before a magistrate immediately to ensure that the arrest is a lawful arrest, and then that you be taken before the grand jury before prosecution so that the people will determine whether or not there was sufficient cause for your arrest. The people will look to see if the charges are just according to law.
Okay, does that, in your opinion, does that mean they basically must prove jurisdiction?
Absolutely. They can't maliciously prosecute you. They can't maliciously arrest you without probable cause. Probable cause will be determined by a magistrate before it goes to the grand jury for indictment or presentment. And if they don't have it, the judge will set you free under habeas corpus.
Okay, I'm wondering if it would be wise to add a few key principles that must be included in order to strengthen the definition of what habeas corpus means, because overall today I think it's been a very perverted definition that's been used in the statutory system.
They don't even do it.
Okay, but okay. So my question then is: should we consider adding more bullets? What are the process steps required to execute habeas corpus?
If I may say this, I would suggest that in the we after accepting these, that we consider voting on a resolution to be served on all prosecutors and magistrate judges. And notice I'm saying magistrate because that's all they are. They're not a judge. That it be served on them in every part of the state, both county, district, and state.
Okay, I got it as a note, and we will go ahead along that line unless anyone else has any suggestions or questions about due process of law.
I think that we ought to open this discussion about these kind of things to people from other states as well on these calls. They can't vote on it, but I think that it would be worthy of hearing their opinions as well.
If I may.
Yes, go ahead, Russ.
Thank you, Hagan. North Carolina, I would like you to have a discussion of this next week. It could take an hour or more. This is too important. It's 32 items. It's very complex. By you.
Any other comments? Whether you're a Floridian or out of state, we do welcome your comments. Even if you're an intern. Yes, go ahead.
I was wondering, when we do send it out, do we do it by registered letter to each one? We get all their names individually? I yield.
We could do that, or we could actually do a personal service in their office where we force them to sign for it.
Okay. I yield. Thank you.
Thank you for the suggestion. I certainly am a big proponent of delivering notices to the public servants using registered mail. When you do use registered mail, it's my understanding that you are opening up a court of record in the international land jurisdiction, and it prevents a lot of games being played. Okay, last call for questions or comments about due process of law.
Hello, I got a question.
Go ahead.
This is Eric McDonough. Hi, everybody. Yeah, you were talking about certified mail. I'm wondering how email applies instead. I do a lot of my work through email. I know you can get confirmation receipts. It's easier for me to track everything and find everything. I go through Gmail. Gmail will certify their timestamps on everything. I guess, I don't know if you have the same backup with certified mail. Somebody has to sign for it, where if they never open the email, I guess they could say they didn't get it. I just didn't know if anybody had any thoughts on that.
Well, email itself is very useful and can be used. It's my comprehension that in a common law court of record, email can be used as evidence, but it is stronger if you're trying to present something to the public servants and hold them accountable. In my view, it's stronger to do it by putting a notice into the public record, taking a certified copy of your notice and using registered mail, delivering it to the target public servant. It's more expensive, certainly, and slower, but when you do that, you are exiting their statutory domain, and email, I think, doesn't give you that advantage. I yield.
Thank you.
If I may?
Yes.
I would imagine that this could amount, if we serve them on individual magistrates, this could be hundreds and hundreds of them. You know, it maybe could be done to the office in general. You know, the district prosecutor, you know, that sort of thing, rather than individually. You know,
Good point. I would ask that the committee consider doing a little research on how to propose to the Assembly to accomplish this communication upon the vote next week, and whether there's a very efficient manner to do it in by, for example, the possibility may be that you could notify the Chief Judge of the Supreme Court of Florida and use notice to agent as notice to principal as notice to agent, and cause that to trickle down throughout the whole judicial and law enforcement system. Or we may find upon research that the law enforcement system is in a very different chain of command and that would not work. So I would ask that the Rules and Due Process of Law Committee do a little research and come back with a recommendation to the Assembly as to how to execute the notice. I yield.
May I?
The gentleman first.
Yeah. There's two types of mail that have been mentioned. Registered in.
Please identify yourself in your county. Sorry.
Bill, Sarasota County.
Thank you.
There's two kinds of mail that have been mentioned: certified and registered. So it would have to determine the correct form if we did it by mail, and from the knowledge I have, it should be certified. I yield.
May I?
Yes.
Stella, Charlotte County. I was wondering if we took a page ad and headed notification to all magistrates, and then listed that, it would do a dual purpose. Not only would the public be aware of it, but we could also at the same time notify our towns, et cetera, et cetera. That's just a suggestion. I yield.
Thank you for that. Okay, I'd like to now suggest we move on. Is there any other committee report and or committee that would like to bring the Assembly up to date on any meetings that took place over the last week?
Roger, this is Diane, Seminole County.
Go ahead.
I don't have a lot to say. I did connect with Robert. I haven't talked to Hagan since then, though, but we tentatively set to get together somewhere in Flagler County on July 8th. Then we also had Hagan and Donald and I had about an hour and a half phone conversation last Saturday, and Roger has sent out a draft listing the lawlessness within our public schools, which we're working on. So at that point, that's all I have. I yield.
Okay, and that is for the Committee on Education, correct?
Yes, I'm sorry.
It's okay. Any questions about the Committee of Education and what the work is that committee is doing? Okay, thank you for the reports from the committee. Any other old business? Hearing none, I'd like to open the floor to new business. Any new business?
I believe you were going to open the floor to Mr. McDonough, weren't you?
Oh, yes. Thank you. Before I do that, I'd like to just tell everybody in the Assembly that there is an awful lot of news percolating now. Some of it is coming through the mainstream media. A lot of it isn't. I highly recommend you seek out independent sources. But I'd like to report under new business one significant new thing I learned of during this last week. About three or 4 years ago, the International Tribunal on Natural Justice held trials in Belgium regarding the human trafficking of the native Canadian Indian children. And the trials were held publicly. The evidence was examined, and convictions were voted that affected both the Pope and the Queen of England. And the Pope pretty quickly after that resigned, and the Queen, I am told, cannot go to Canada or she will be arrested. What I've learned most recently, though, is that that same International Tribunal of Natural Justice has convened in Tennessee and is currently holding trials of high-level pedophiles from Washington, D.C. and Hollywood, along with the judges and the prosecutors that have been protecting them. That's the limit of my knowledge. I can't answer any detailed questions because I just haven't been educated yet. But those of you that are interested, by all means, do a little research on the International Tribunal of Natural Justice that I am told is currently operating in Tennessee. We do have a guest speaker on new business tonight. I would ask that he identify himself, his county, and then if possible, I would like to go into a interactive session where he gives us some of the background of what he's been able to recently accomplish, specifically regarding the ability to record public officials, and then go into a Q&A session where people can ask him questions, and he might be able to answer them. Eric, are you here?
Hello, everybody. Dr. James Eric McDonough. I go by Eric. I'm in Miami-Dade County, Florida, and just keep filing lawsuits, and most of them, fortunately, I'm winning. Just recently, I got my appeal I did on the right to record police. The Miami-Dade State Attorney filed a petition for certiorari to take it to the Supreme Court, and they recently denied her petition. So my 11th Circuit Court of Appeals win from last year is now the law of the land in Florida. The citation is McDonough v. Rundle, 862 F3D 314, 11th Circuit 2017. And the 11th Circuit normally controls Florida, Georgia, and Alabama, but they have ruled on it on Florida law, so it probably only covers Florida, but they held that public officials have no expectation of privacy in the performance of their duties, and as such, the Florida wiretap law, which is Florida Statute 934.03, does not apply to recording public officials, even secretly in their office in a closed-door meeting.
Eric, if possible, would you be willing to forward me the reference you just gave relative to the results, and I will be happy to communicate them out to everyone on the email list.
Sure. Let me just going to get my laptop open, and I'll find a copy of the order. I don't have a copy of the denial of cert, but I have a copy of the 11th Circuit order, which is what was upheld.
Okay. And can you tell us what are the next problem or problems that you're working on?
Oh, that's a big question. Let's see if I can try to boil that down. About 6 years ago, I asked a police officer who lives in my neighborhood basically not to run my children over. After we had a conversation, he chased me down. They falsely imprisoned me, intimidated me, told me if I tried to file a complaint, it wouldn't be good for me. I went and tried to file a complaint, at which point they didn't take my complaint, but told the officer to file false criminal charges against me. All in a nutshell, 4 or 5 false imprisonments, 3 false arrests, 20-plus First Amendment rights violations later, and 8 lawsuits. I've worked on lawsuits for government censorship on social media, and obviously this lawsuit on the right to record police. I have other lawsuits for a bunch of First and Fourth Amendment and other rights violations against police officers, a whole bunch of them, and as well as public records lawsuits. So I'm kind of across the board pretty well.
Okay, but could you define for us what is the next set of problems or problem that you're planning to focus on?
Oh, right now I have a major public records lawsuit where I'm trying to get the city of Homestead and their attorneys, or a private law firm, enjoined from 5 or 6 different types of violations of the public records law. The case precedent is already fairly well established for these types of violations. It's just, even though Florida has what's considered to be one of the top open records or FOIA-type laws in the nation, there's not very many teeth in it, and most local officials don't like to follow the law. I'm not sure if it'll necessarily establish any precedent. Well, there is one piece of precedent that I'm trying to establish in that case. There's one bad piece of case law, I believe, in Florida on public records, where if you file a records request for security footage of cameras at, a police department or city hall or wherever, they're claiming it's exempted under the security exemptions. And there's one case, I believe it was out of the 5th District, where somebody had filed a records request for video footage on a city bus, and they refused, saying that would, let the details out of the security system, which is absolutely ridiculous. Florida has a very interesting tidbit of their law. If there's a district court of appeals case law in Florida, if none of the other district courts of appeals or the Florida Supreme Court has any ruling that's in conflict or contrary to it, that district court of appeals ruling becomes binding law for the entire state. So the 5th District ruling would basically be binding upon the entire state. Anywhere you go, you would most likely lose your trial. But if you're in a different court of appeals, the court of appeals, when you go there, will not be bound by that. So I'm trying to get into the 3rd District Court of Appeals to get conflict with the 5th District, and hopefully we'll be able to have it certified as a question of public importance and possibly go to the Florida Supreme Court to make it definitive. From now on, we can get security footage. In the law for the exemption, it talks about video and audio presentations as if you were the security company and you're giving a video presentation to the city to show them how to be secure. Obviously, there might be stuff in there that we don't want bad people to know, but that's entirely different than video footage from a camera that everybody can see where the camera's at and it's sitting out in public. So that was where I'm trying to push on public records next.
Got it. Could you give us, you're in Miami-Dade County, could you give us just a couple sentences on your background?
Originally from Richmond, Virginia. I got my associates in ophthalmic dispensing, making glasses and contacts when I was 20. I moved to Key West for a year, went back to Virginia, got my bachelor's, and then moved back to Miami and did my PhD in chemistry. And I met my wife there. She's the marine biologist for Biscayne National Park, and we both live here in Miami. I have 3 young kids, and I work for the federal government as a primary patent examiner.
As a primary patent examiner?
Yes,
right?
sir. Yes, sir.
Got it.
Basically Einstein's old job.
Yeah. Okay, let me open up for questions for, you'd like to go by Eric, right?
Yes, sir.
Any questions for Eric?
May I?
Yes.
This is Bill from Sarasota County. So as it stands right now regarding the recordings you talked about, is it law that public officials can be recorded at all times?
In Florida, as long I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Yes, I would say yes, as long as we're talking about Florida and they're acting in the performance of their official duties. If you were at a public official's house on a weekend and y'all were talking about fishing in the football game, I would say no. But as long as they're acting in the performance of official duties. Where it gets even more tricky, I'll try to give 2 examples that might help elucidate it a little better. Imagine you were in public and you were speaking to a police officer who was in uniform, but you were talking about fishing or the baseball game. That might not be considered in the performance of their official duties. However, you could be at the chief of police house in his home, in his living room, speaking with him about being abused by his officers. That would be in the performance of his official duties. It really has to do with who you're speaking with and what their duties are. You know, if it's a chief of police, obviously you talking to him about misconduct of his underlings would be something of his official duties. If you were talking to a mayor or a councilman and you were talking about something that was in front of the city or the board or the commission, that would be in their official duties. Does that make sense? I'm not sure I clarified that as well as I wanted to.
Yeah, that's good. Although there'd be one more point. As long as they as long as they have their job and they're getting paid, it seems that one should be able to record them at all times if they're in their time that they are being paid as an employee.
Yeah, that's a lot trickier question, and I think it might. Sometimes this stuff gets really fact specific. It might depend on who you were talking with. Like, for example, in Homestead, their commissioners are considered part-time, and they're expected to have a full-time employment. So technically, you could say 24/7, they could be a commissioner any time as long as you're dealing with their duties. It's not necessarily like being on the clock or not being on the clock. You could be on the clock and not using your official duties, such as you could be on the clock and you could be using the bathroom. Obviously, you have an expectation of privacy then. But you could be off the clock and still doing work. So I guess that's probably more of a mixed bag and probably depend on exactly what type of official you were speaking with.
Okay, thanks. I yield.
Any other questions for Eric? Eric, yes, go ahead.
Eric, this is Mark. Hey, if you had it to do over again, how would you do it different? I mean, for the amount of time invested, where do you get the most returns for what we're trying to accomplish, or you, or anybody?
That's an interesting one, and I definitely see the validity of the question. I wish there was a simple answer to that. For instance, I've had Miami-Dade change their entire firearm return policy and give me back my guns, which they were unlawfully holding, and promise never to do it to anybody else again, with an email. I was able to get Everglades National Park and Dry Tortugas National Park to fix their social media policy where they were unlawfully censoring people with an email. I got Miami-Dade to change their policy. It required a lawsuit followed by an email, and 2 weeks later they settled. With this case against the state attorney, emails don't work with them, so I had to sue them in the federal district court. We won on the motions to dismiss. I thought there was excellent rulings, and then the judge decided to do a 180 when we got to summary judgment, which caused me to lose, which forced me to the appeal. So to establish precedent, anytime you really want to establish firm precedent that's going to be binding, it's going to take time. I filed the recording case in January 2015, and last Monday is when the Supreme Court finally denied cert. However, if they accepted cert, it had been another 6, 8 months or a year before I got a ruling, so it could take 3 to 4 years to establish precedent. Most people and attorneys are hoping they'll file a case, they'll win the trial, and then they'll either get their injunction or declaration or get paid, whatever it is that they were looking for in terms of relief from the court, and hope that the government or the opposing side doesn't file an appeal. If you lose, obviously you can file an appeal, but when you go through appeals, it's just more and more time and more money. Unfortunately, the trial courts don't establish precedent, only the appellate courts do. So although I would have preferred this to be over years ago, I'm kind of glad that I lost the trial, because by being able to go to the appeal, I've now established precedent for the whole state. Where if I would have just won my trial, it would have only applied to me and those specific facts. It wouldn't have helped anybody else. So helping me, yes, but establishing precedent and helping everybody else, no. So it's really kind of a tough gig. Sometimes I don't like to try to cause violations. I always want, nobody's perfect. I want to be able to go and speak to the government, find they're doing something wrong, notify them of doing something wrong, and then them fix their problems. I'm not sure how it is in the rest of the state, but I can tell you the majority of South Florida doesn't operate that way. You tell them they have their problems, they double down and they retaliate against you to try to shut you up. I'm assuming a lot of people in this group have had similar experiences.
Thank you, Eric. Any other questions or comments for Eric?
Let's see. Yeah, Eric, Mark again. So if you had an activist who was starting out in some other county, and I know you set a precedent, and thank you very much for the audio for taping civil servants, recording civil servants. But what I want to know, if somebody wants to get involved with how many years you've been doing this, this is almost the same question. For time invested, what would you recommend somebody do if they want to get involved?
Probably go to the council meetings and go to any public meetings you can and speak out. Let them know what's going on. Try to be as calm, polite, and professional as possible, but be prepared and, have evidence with you, which you might or might not be able to present, and know what the laws or statute or case law relevant to that would be. That's probably how, doing it all over again, that's probably how I would have started off, was just going to the council or, your city commission or county commission. They might not listen to you, they might not hear you, but at least you have it on the record, and they know. And although they might not care what you have to say, might not want to do anything, the more and more that they start feeling that their constituents care about what you say, the more pressure is going to be on them to act correctly. Well, it's kind of a hierarchy. I kind of work my way from the bottom up the chain of command, but every step on the ladder up the chain of command, I had retaliation and issues where doing it again, I'd probably go right to the top. Either that, or I'd skip that altogether and just file a federal civil rights lawsuit.
That was the main thing I want to that I'm trying to figure out here. Is, are you better off not to languish in the lower courts and just go right up there to a civil rights federal?
The nice thing is, in most court type of situations where you're suing, you're generally required to exhaust all your lower level remedies before you move to the next level. Under 42 U.S.C. 1983, which is the federal civil rights statute that gives you standing to sue governments for violating your rights in the federal courts, you don't have to exhaust any remedies. You can go right there. You could be violated today, and tonight or tomorrow file your case. The thing is, you either have to have an attorney that knows what they're doing, that's willing to do your case, or you have to know how to do the case yourself, which takes a lot of learning and reading and researching.
Well, the advantage someone like you would have, or a number of us here, is we may have that knowledge, but the exasperating part is we have to get more people involved, so we've got to make it so simple that there's the least amount of trouble and liability, so that other people can start working in other counties. You know where I'm headed with this?
I see exactly what you're headed, and that's why I said I'd probably start off speaking to the county commission or the mayor or higher level political appointee people, because they can put pressure down below them. Without having an attorney that's willing to take your case, or money to hire an attorney, or knowing how to do it by yourself, filing federal civil rights lawsuits, the federal civil courts are absolutely brutal and Darwinian. If you don't have everything right, they're going to cut you fast. And if you get cut, even though you might have had points, but you didn't articulate them properly, you can get countersued and get hit with frivolous lawsuits and frivolous claims. I know one other guy here in Miami who was abused by the police, and he tried to go about it his own, and he lost at summary judgment and got a $100,000 verdict against him. So it's definitely not.
If I may.
Sure.
If I may. We've got to go point of order here. This is a common law as we the people in assembly. And I think we're just getting way off topic. We're talking about hiring attorneys and going into statutory court. That's not what this call is about. And I just like to call point of order. Anybody got a second on that?
Second that.
Thank you.
Okay, let me ask you a couple quick questions, and then I'll ask last call for questions for Eric. Eric, are you aware that every branch of our government, the local government, the state government, your local county commissioners, your sheriff, every branch has been converted into a privately owned for-profit corporation, and the people don't own those corporations?
I know the government is a corporation. As to who owns them or how they're owned, I haven't done much research on that. But they're definitely corporations. I'll agree with you to that extent. Well, 100%.
Okay. And that to further this line of discussion, the founders debated the idea of having a corporate form of government, which by definition is a fascist form of government. And that's what Hitler had in Germany. And they discarded it because they said that once you become part of a corporation, what matters to you as a public servant is what the owners of the corporation want, not what the public wants, not what the people want. So they discarded it, and yet over time, each branch has been converted unlawfully and illegally into a privately owned for-profit corporation, and it's not owned by the people. So I wonder whether or not that might be a fertile area, especially regarding the judiciary, because we do have evidence that the judiciary in Florida, we have a 2 or 3 year old Dun & Bradstreet report that is evidence that every single court in Florida is owned by a corporation. Judiciary courts of the state of Florida, all capitals, and that the lawful courts are not corporate courts. So these are unlawful, illegal courts. They're administrative in nature, not justice-oriented.
Tribunals.
Any thoughts?
I haven't given much thought to that.
May I?
Okay. Just last question. Do you know Mario Jimenez, Dr. Mario Jimenez?
I've met Mario.
Okay, great. All right, someone asked for the floor?
May I?
Yes.
Eric, are you aware that the U.S. Patent Office, it's one of the 19 enumerated powers that were granted to Britain when we originally set up the country, and they've been in charge of the Patent Office and the Copyright Office. So you're a British subject just because you work for them. I didn't know if you're aware of that.
I know in the enumerating or enabling clauses of Article 1, Section 2, it lays out the groundwork for the Patent Office and the Post Office and several other agencies. Most of the agencies outside of the enabling clauses I don't believe to be constitutional. I've never seen anything that I'm a British subject or that Britain has control over a patent office.
Well, that's part of the territorial United States government. There's 3 governments. There's the federal, the territorial, and the municipal. And the territorial is in charge of the U.S. Patent Office, which is controlled by Britain.
Does the speaker please identify yourself, first name and county?
Yeah, this is Robert from Hernando.
Robert, do you have any evidence that you could put forward that we could get to Eric that would substantiate your statement?
Surely.
If you would send it to me, my email is rbdredboydavid7804@gmail.com. I will get it to Eric.
That's affirmative.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Welcome.
If I may.
Yeah, go ahead.
A quick add-on for the subject that's just being discussed. You may want to look up also, or anyone else interested on the call, all the Queen's men. I posted it just today, and it's alarming. It's all the information about the Patent Office and how it directly connects the Queen.
Please identify yourself in your county.
Gordon from Citrus County.
Okay, and Gordon, could you tell us where to look for all the Queen's men? Is that a YouTube?
Well, you're familiar, and I believe familiar with my webpage. I posted it today, so I can't remember offhand all the details on how I got it. But all the Queen's men should bring that up if you just put it in a search engine.
Okay, for Eric's
benefit,
would
otherwise, if you wish to contact me or go to my webpage, you can extract the whole thing from there. I think I sent you an email personal too.
Okay, I will look it up, and if I can find it, I'll send it to Eric, and if I can't find it, I'll ask you to send it again. Thank you.
May I? Yes.
I yield. What he's talking about is American intelligence media. That's where you will find the information he's speaking on, and plus a lot more of what he's speaking on. Juan Jose, Sarasota.
Thank you. Thank
You're
you,
welcome.
Juan.
If I could, real quick, I just want to make sure that I'm real clear here. I just mentioned that I was, worked for the Patent Office as part of the background, but everything I'm saying here is completely my own personal opinion, not the opinion of the Patent Office or the government.
Good point.
Thank you.
Let me just emphasize what Juan just said, folks. On YouTube, there are a number of good independent sources, and none of them are necessarily 100% accurate, but they're pretty darn accurate. I'd say over 90%, 95% accurate in their reporting. And one that is very, very powerful in understanding behind the scenes what's going on is American Intelligence Media. I highly recommend that you subscribe to their YouTube and you can learn an awful lot that is not in the public media. American intelligence media. I yield.
If I may, I can
Yes.
I can confirm that is the site I got it from.
Thank you. Okay, folks, we've gone over the hour. Last call, open mic, questions, comments?
If I may.
Yes.
Roger, all the Queen's men is in your inbox.
Thank you, and I will send it out to everyone with the link for tonight's recording. Thank you.
If I may.
Yes.
Juan Jose, Sarasota. Roger, I'm just wondering if you had gotten my email about the Nextdoor app squelching my free speech and trying to get these assembly meetings to the public.
Yes, I got your email. I read it. I don't know if you're asking me to do anything specific.
I really don't know. I just been stifled, and I thought I'd share it with you.
Yeah, I appreciate it. There's an awful lot of censorship going on, and it is being addressed slowly. Raising the public's consciousness is the first step, and then I expect that many of these censored areas are going to be held to account. And I'm not sure about the specific Nextdoor thing that you're talking about, but right now, unless you have a very specific and serious request for my help, I have an awful lot of work I'm already focused on getting done. So
I realize that, and that's why I did not ask for help. I yield.
Thank you. If at any point it is a case of lawlessness and you want to call on the statewide grand jury, we can talk about that. Okay,
thank you, brother.
Last call. Questions and comments?
If I may?
Yes.
This is Don from Seminole. In the Declaration of Independence, the last paragraph.
Hey, Charlotte County, this is Charlotte County Copwatch, and I just wanted you to know that I am using this stuff under fair use. And also, remember to like and subscribe this channel. Also, too, keep in mind, I do not make any money on YouTube. This is 5 hours work a day, fighting for freedom. And you can donate with PayPal and Patreon. I just want you to think about this. If everybody gives to PayPal and Patreon, Patreon is every month. Actually, PayPal you can do every month. I have 12,000 subscribers. If everybody gives, I can quit my regular job and go full-time investigations on Charlotte County and possibly even more and beyond. So just keep that in mind. If everybody helps out, I can go full-time doing this. Thanks.